So like I said, um, if you guys remember from the last couple of weeks, I've talked about inside of our service classes or our DAO classes or our DTO classes, if we run into an error, we want a way to throw a message or throw an error that corresponds to what actually went wrong, right? I could hypothetically throw a generic exception, but maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe I want something a little more stand out in the logs. So this is where custom exceptions come into play, right? So if I create a custom exception, I can do a lot of things with it. Really, the simplest thing I can do is just to extend the exception class, or the base exception class. So if I do, what's a good one here? Let's say these are not found. So we'll call this guy car not found exception, and we'll just say extends exception, and then we'll call the constructor. So public car not found exception string message. Yeah. So then all we're really going to do when we call this, all we're really going to do when we call or initiate this exception in its simplest form is pass in a string message containing a small description of what actually went wrong, and then call the constructor of the superclass. Now, a couple other things that I could do here is I could do a public so I could pass in like a level code, or I could create an enum class that corresponds to an error level. So is it a warning? Is it a fatal exception? Is it just an error? Was there, any number of things? So like in this case, I can just print level. So now I have a custom car not found exception. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie this into my front end. User, oh, this guy right here. Do h-form. So really all I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a basic form that points to a managed bean that will search for a particular card. Card. And then I'll just go ahead and create a command button. Action equals So now I'll go in and create my car search bean. And then we'll set some properties. What did I call that? Private string search term. I know I'm kind of just running through this. You guys have all seen this so many times at this point. It's kind of a moot point to go over it in too much detail. Search term. Alright. And then I just have to add a command serialize. Okay, so I've wired up my front end and I've wired up my managed bean. So now I need to go, what are you not happy about here? Oh. So now I need to go in and create a, just vibrated from where? Why did I vibrate? So I've already got a vehicle service bean. I'm going to just refactor this real quick. Or, now let's do this. Vehicle search bean. Open this guy. And vehicle search bean. Okay, cool. Okay, so inside of my vehicle service, I don't really have any methods. So what I'm going to do is just create a, and ideally I would do this in the interface, but for simplicity's sake, actually, do I even have it? I don't think I even have an interface for this. No, I don't even have an interface for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a public car search method. String search term. Return new car. Stub that out. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a really simple for loop for car in this dot get cars if, let's say, car dot get model equals ignore case. Let's actually do this. Let's make this a list. Model equals ignore case search term or car dot get make equals ignore case search term found cars dot append add. So really all we're doing is we're just iterating over all of our cars and it's a basic search. We're iterating over our cars, making sure that just checking to see if the make or the model matches the search term. So now what we would want to do to give some feedback to the user, and we could do this in the bean as well, and say, okay, in my search function, did I return anything? If I didn't, print this to the screen. But realistically, we want to try to remove any and all logic out of our managed beans and pass that into our service layer. So what I'll do is I'll say if foundCars.size is equal to 0, throw new car not found exception. Could not find vehicles, if I could spell vehicles, matching search term. I could spell term. Search term. And add to method signature. Okay. Managed property value equals ram result set private list car. So now what I'm doing is I'm going back into my managed bean and I'm just adding a getter and setter for another member variable called result set, and that's just going to store all of our found cars, right? So now we'll need to go back into our search, into our car search facelet. But first, I'm just going to grab this data table from the cars table and place it in here. That way we can see what our result set is. Whoop. And car search, or what do I call that? Vehicle search bean dot result set. Okay. And then I will just add in. No, I don't want that. I do want. Don't want that. I do want this guy. And now I want to add. So now I want to add one more field here, and we'll call it h output text value equals vehicle search bean dot message. So I've added a table. I can't talk today. I've added a data table to display the results of our search. I've added a very basic input form here to allow us to enter in a search term, whether that be make or model. And then I have added in an output text with our vehicle search bean message. Now, to tie this all together, if I go back into my vehicle search bean and I add one final managed property, message, private string, message, setter. Shoot, I gotta do one more thing here. So now, inside of my search function, or search method, I'm going to drop a try catch. I'm going to say try catch car not found exception ex. And so basically what this is going to do is Yeah, I know it's not there yet. So basically what this is going to do is, if there's an exception thrown, we're just going to say this.set message to the message of the exception, which will give us the no cars found matching search term X. So now I have to create a, where did I put that in? The vehicle service? Vehicle service, vehicle service equals new. Yeah, I know, I'm getting there. This dot search term dot set set. So now we're just setting our result set to the results of the search. So now all of that being said, when I go back into my car search, so if no message is ever thrown, I should get, I should never see an output text here. If I find cars, it should give me a full data table. If I don't find cars, I should get an error. And then we'll just do this right here. Equals. Okay. So now I'm going to compile. And let it run. And then where did I put that in? Faces, forms, car search. I knew I did that wrong. Okay, let's try it again here. Alright. There's a button, right? Alright, so let's say forward and do a search. Okay, so we've initiated our vehicle's service class or service object. Our search term is forward. So now, one cool thing that we can do in IntelliJ when we're debugging is select a particular piece of text or a particular piece of code, and by doing it depends upon how your function keys are set up, either function Alt F8 or just Alt F8 to bring up the expression evaluator, and we can do it as either a code fragment or an expression. But basically what it lets me do is, if I'm paused on a breakpoint, it will let me actually run this method, see what's returned before I actually give me a null pointer. So now I can see, okay, there's an exception thrown here. It's a new method, so I'm going to go ahead and step into it to see where the exception is actually thrown. I can look at the stack trace here real quick and see. 45. All right. So we'll step into it. Oh, I see what's happening here. Okay. So we never actually wired up the cars method into... We never actually wired up the cars method to pull from the XML again. So let's kill this and just stub this in. I should have, in my networking, I should have a stub, right? Okay. So let's do this. Okay. Deploy. Faces, forms, parser.next.html forward search. Okay, so we never ran into an error, so now we get this single search result, right? However, if I change this to Chevrolet, and I evaluate, well, once I initialize, if I evaluate my function call here, you can see now we throw a car not found exception. So the exception is caught, we set the message, and you can see now we're printing out could not find vehicles matching search term Chevy, and inside of our data table we say no records found. Pretty simple. Any questions on exceptions? Okay, cool. So, like I said, we've got about another 50 minutes. If you guys want to use it as lab time, feel free. Otherwise, I mean, if you want to work on it outside of class too, you're free to go. But for those of you guys that want to use lab time, please, I'm here. So any questions related to your projects, I'm happy to answer it.